Welcome to the Produce on Purpose podcast, where we experience life being the real you. I'm your host, Randy Adkins Jr., and today we have an awesome guest. We have Katharine Giovanni. Katharine Giovanni, she is a three-time award-winning best-selling author, speaker, and one of the original founders of the independent concierge industry. Katharine has authored over 12 books, including her latest, The Ultimate Path to Forgiveness, Unlocking Your Power. Katharine's journey about battling stage 3 cancer to navigating a challenging childhood has given her profound insights about resilience and forgiveness. Join us as Katharine shares her invaluable lessons and explores the transformative power of forgiveness. Get ready for a conversation brimming with inspiration and empowerment. Katharine, how are you today? And thank you for joining the Produce on Purpose podcast.
Oh, I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so we'll start off with a very easy question is tell us a little bit about your journey, how you ended up where you are at this moment, and let our audience know what you're going to share today with us.
I am a forgiveness coach, and I've come up with a very unique system of forgiveness, and it probably started in the 8th grade in never mind what year it was, it doesn't matter. And I was in the 8th grade, and my family was really quite pickled. They were alcoholics. I was getting horribly bullied in school, and I tried to commit suicide. And as a result of these things, I turned into one of those kids, you know who I'm talking about, draped in black, always negative, usually sick, always sick with something, had one friend, you know, and I kind of bobbled my way through life until my late 20s, when my mother fell down a flight of stairs, broke her hip, and ended up in the hospital. And even my mother couldn't get a gin and tonic in the hospital. So she sobered up, and we sent her to rehab. And we spent the next few years closer than sisters. I mean, we were inseparable, and we forgave each other, and we were everything to each other. And then she died of breast cancer. And that was the flashpoint of my life, to be honest with you. And I realized that if I didn't clean up my act, I was going to die too. So I quit drinking. I've been sober for 34 years. And the thing about getting sober is you go through the recovery programs and they want you to make amends and they want you to reach out and apologize to people. Yeah. I was shy. So the thought of reaching out to people that could possibly be really mad at me left me cold, man. I just didn't want to do that. I just didn't. And anybody who's an introvert, yeah, no, it's not our thing. Now I'm an extroverted introvert now because I've learned how to do this stuff, but back then, but that's probably when my forgiveness journey started. And a few years ago, we figured out the how of it all, because everybody tells you need to forgive. Nobody teaches you how. And what if you don't want to? What do you do then? But they probably started when my mother died. And I went on to be one of the founders of the concierge industry and write a bunch of books and stuff like that. But that's how it started.
You know, I find that forgiveness is one of those topics that when people hear it, they really don't understand what forgiveness is really about. And, you know, a lot of what I have ended up, whether it's through the Bible, through my own experiences, I found that forgiveness is a lot of about surrendering and letting go. What's your take on forgiveness and what it really means?
Well, first of all, what forgiveness really means to me is I want you out of my head. I want you out of my head. I want to stop thinking about you. I want to stop obsessing about you. And when I see your name or I see your face, I want to stop thinking I want to throw something at you. That's what I want. I just want you out of my head. I want my life back. The thing about forgiveness is everybody watching this broadcast right now, including yourself, my friend, on a 10 scale, with 10 being unforgivable dumpster fire, and 1 being the easiest person in the world to forgive, y'all are thinking of your number 10s. Everybody does. And that's why everybody has such a hard time with forgiveness, because you're thinking about that one person that's unforgivable, and you don't want to forgive them. And that's fair. In my world, you don't have to. because there's a lot of people, places, and things, and I did say places and things, stay with me, that you can forgive before you even get to that dumpster fire. There's a lot of other people you can forgive. And, there are some things in the world that are unforgivable. There are. So it may not even be appropriate, depending upon how horrific it is, that for you to forgive them.
So, what are your thoughts on beginning the process? Because, of course, the idea, if you understand that forgiveness is something I'm supposed to do, how do I actually begin this process of actually forgiving? Because I've heard, of course, many people will be like, there's always this forgive and not forget. And, everyone throws in all of these different sayings. How do you start down this path?
All right, toss the sayings, throw them out. Especially the forgive and forget one. Yeah, no, I'm not forgetting. I'm from New York City originally, lived there for 30 years, and this girl's not forgetting anything. There might be some magical unicorn person happily living on the planet someplace that's able to forgive this stuff. I'm not your girl, and I wrote the book on it, literally. So, yeah, what my process, I have a system that's going to teach you, and I'm going to teach it right now, but the system is going to take the emotional charge out of the person you need to forget, you're forgiving. So you can look at that person and there will be no emotional charge whatsoever. You're not going to love them. You're not going to hate them. You're not going to care. That's what I'm going for. I'm going for neutrality. Now, before I tell you about the system, a few little things. Just because I forgive you doesn't mean I want a relationship with you. I probably don't. Just because I forgive you doesn't mean I'm now giving you a pass and it means all of a sudden you are correct. You're not. You're still wrong. You're still awful. You're still a dumpster fire. Forgiveness is selfish. I do it for me. I do it because I want you out of my head. Forgiveness is also, in my world, you don't have to reach out and call anybody. You do it in your own room, in your own house. You don't have to tell a soul you're doing this. You do it for you. Forgiveness is completely selfish. And for those of us who had to forget, who needed to forgive dead people, to be perfectly blunt, because forgiveness is only for you, it doesn't matter where they are or they're not, because they're still living in your head, and I want them out of my head. So on that 10 scale, I want you to write down, get a piece of paper and a pen, or your phone. I really don't care. But if I want you to go to a nice quiet place. Did you know there's an off button on your phone? It's a magical thing. You can turn it off.
Yes.
I said this to a couple months back. I said this to a woman, and the color drained from her face. She turned white as a ghost. She said, "Oh no, I couldn't turn it off." Okay, that's fine. Put it on mute. I don't care. But I want you to be alone, and I want you to write down all the people that you think you need to forgive, and then I want you to rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. And you can have 15 number 3s for all I care. I really don't care. And then slowly you go through the list saying the mantra that I have in my book, and I've got worksheets and all of that stuff in there too. But it's a very simple mantra. And here's the piece that this is the piece that makes it so unique. Einstein proved. I have a whole chapter in science for people who don't believe what I'm about to say. There's a whole chapter in there proving that what I say. Einstein proved that energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just transforms from one thing to another. So when you get mad, and I also have some Bible verses to back me up too. I'm prepared. When you get mad, what happens? It leaves your mouth and it dissipates into the universe. Sadly, it does not. It hangs in your energy field until you use forgiveness to clear it. Now, let me give you a visual. For anybody who's listening to this broadcast, I'm about to hold a very opaque purple coffee cup right in front of my face. So this coffee cup represents anger. Look how well I can manage it. It's off to the side. You and I can have a nice conversation. Everything's great. But the longer I hold on to it, the more it's going to hurt. Now look at me. I'm using 2 hands to hold the coffee cup. It's not exactly getting into my thoughts right now, the negativity and the anger, but it's creeping in. And the longer I hold on to this anger, now look at my body language. It's right in front of my face. My entire being is focused on the anger and the negativity. I can't see you at all at this point.
Right.
Everything, my conversations, everything is focused on the anger. So I'm losing friends. Why? Because I'm negative and I'm sick and I'm tired all the time. So forgiveness is going to allow you to put away the negativity and clear up your self talk and be free again. At the bottom line, that's what it's going to do. But you didn't forgive the energy around the people. And that's the special sauce. Einstein also proved that everything, including this microphone, everything has energy around it on our planet. Everything.
Hmm.
So when you're angry, it has this invisible tie to you and the person. So you forgive the person, the energy around the person, you forgive yourself, the energy around yourself, and you forgive the energy around the whole thing.
And
And
so
you may have to do
that's
it more than once because you're not going to get a number 10 level person down to a 1 in one pass. You're just not. It's like an onion. You're going to forgive that first layer and you're going to think it didn't work. I get that all the time. Yeah, it did work actually. But you just peeled back the first layer. Your mind is an incredible tool and it protects you. And as you forgive that first layer, the back, the back filing cabinet in your brain is going to start to open and memories that you didn't know were there are going to start pouring out. So you have to forgive the next layer. And that's
and
kind of how
consistently kind of forgive and continue to release that energy
right.
or transform or transmute that energy into
That's right.
something to where it's using to serve you versus something that what do you tell the person that believes that at this moment they don't have anyone to forgive? What do you tell them?
I actually have a few people in my life, some relatives that have said that to me several times, actually. I have nobody to forgive. Okay, well, and I smile and I kind of chuckle to myself. I try and not laugh at people, but it really is kind of funny. Yeah, you do have people to forgive. Okay, maybe you grew up in a completely functional childhood. Good for you. Most of us didn't, but if you did, I think it's great. I actually know somebody who grew up in a functional house. Good for you. I'd like to think my kids grew up in a functional house. I can only imagine what they're thinking. But, yeah, you do. How about last weekend when you were driving on I-95 South and somebody cut you off and you got mad? There's
Right.
person number one.
Right.
How about the guy in the office who stole your sandwich at lunchtime and you're starving and you had a meeting and you spent all day starving because you literally couldn't eat anything? You could forgive that person too. There's
Right.
always people you can forgive.
Yes.
There's always people. How about the teacher in the 6th grade that failed you and you got angry because you studied for that one? You could forgive that person too. How about yourself? You don't have anybody else to forgive? Start with yourself.
I like that one because I think
Start with yourself.
that one's often missed. Is that sometimes our toughest critic, our one that beats us up probably the most, is ourselves,
That's right.
and the idea of forgiving yourself can sometimes free you of some of the greatest limitations, bondages, different things that you have going on in your life that is going through and holding you into a particular place. So, as you kind of explained there and talked about forgiveness, you talked about saying some type of mantra for the person, or you actually brought up person, place, because all of these things can have energies, right? And
That's right.
why is it that sometimes when you go to a particular place you feel a particular way? How do you what are just an idea of something that you were saying, and why is that so important that you continue to give yourself that type of encouragement? I would call it encouragement.
Well, let's talk about number 10s and let's talk about maybe you are your number 10. Maybe you're the unforgivable person. Let's talk about that. The reason I say dumpster fire, there's a reason for it. Because if you can't forgive yourself and you're the number 10, or you can't forgive the person who did this horrific, unforgivable thing, pick out other pieces of the memory. Let's take an example that I used a lot. Let's say you're driving down the road, you're going to work. You stop at a red light. And at that particular morning, You notice the building on your left. It happens to be one of the schools you attended and you got bullied there. And the memory kind of zings your brain. And by the time you get to work, you're kind of grumpy. And you're kind of taking it out on everybody because you're kind of grumpy. Because in the back of your mind, this movie you didn't even know was there has started to play. So you're grumpy. So what do? Okay, maybe you can't forgive the bully. That's fair. I couldn't forgive the kid who bullied me when I was a kid. It took me a while to forgive that person. But you can forgive other things in the memory. You can forgive the building and the energy around the building. So next time you drive, that building isn't going to cause a reaction in you. You can forgive the table, the bed, the chair. You can forgive the park. You can forgive the swing set. You can forgive the other people around that didn't do anything to help you. And you can forgive the energy around all these things. And
Right.
that might be just enough to put you on that tipping point. So it's like a brick wall. Instead of trying to barrel through and drive yourself crazy because you can't get through the wall, you pick out a few things from the memory, you walk around the wall, keep going, circle back when you can. Now,
Hmm.
how do you forgive yourself? Well, the beauty of 24 hours is every morning we wake up a brand new person. And I genuinely mean that. So I can look back into my life and compartmentalize, I think that's the word, various times. So I can look back at teenage Catherine, who was a mess, but I can look at her as a separate person because I'm not that teenage Catherine anymore. And I can pick apart the memory and I can forgive that kid. There is a passage in the Bible that got me to forgive my parents who were kind of my number 10s. And Jesus is nailed up in the cross. And I always think about the pain he must have been in. I don't know why. I always think that whenever I was a kid in church. And he said, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." And to me, it means if you're in the fifth grade and you don't know trigonometry, I can't get mad at you because you haven't learned it yet. So
Right.
my parents did the best they could with the tools they had at the time. Was it good enough? Of course not. But I can forgive that. And if you combine some Simone Biles level mental gymnastics,
Mm.
I kind of was able to walk it back. And I went from a 10 to a 9 to a 7. It's a marathon, not a sprint. This took me months. But that's how you can approach forgiving yourself as well. Teenage Catherine didn't know any better. She created that persona to survive.
Hmm.
The world she was living in was very dark, and she was a survivor. I can look at that kid and I can forgive it. And if I can't
Yeah.
forgive that kid, you pick out my childhood home, and you forgive the energy around the childhood home. You forgive the dining room table where the lectures started. I don't know, whatever you want to forgive. Doesn't matter. But forgive the other things in the memory and keep doing it every night. And if you never can forgive yourself, that's fine. For, Forgive what you can and keep going.
Well, it sounds like it's a process, and
Yes, it
you
is.
know, I've heard the crawl, walk, run. You have to
Right.
crawl before you walk, before you run, and just by going back and picking out different areas in a scene, whether it's, and I like the idea that you talked about that we're a new person every day that we wake up. That you are
We are.
not the same person that you were yesterday or 10
No.
years ago. And if anyone brings that up to you, you're not that person. So you can bring up something from the past, but that's not who I am at this moment. And so
Exactly.
I can go back and I can forgive based on what I knew then and what I was operating on at that moment. And so if I'm forgiving myself, I can go back and begin to go through that process. And sounds like if we have the fortitude and the ability to say, you know what, I want to have a better outlook on life. I want to see things clearly. And we don't want the cup in front of our face or the focus in our area, that we need to start to go down that path of saying, you know what, I'm going to start peeling these layers. And then you have the scale. So you have 10, you might have something that's a 10. It's probably going to take longer. It's just one of those things. It's just not going to magically disappear in your life. But if you keep working at it over time, there is hope that you can get to a place of pure freedom. As you're talking about forgiveness, I just brought up a word that I think sometimes people use but may not have a true definition of it. Is there some level of freedom on the other side of forgiveness, and what do you define that as?
I'm going to quote science at you and just personal experience. When you start to forgive, magical things are going to happen. And I want you to really start with the easy ones, and I'm serious about that. You start with the ones, twos, and threes, and you leave that dumpster fire for last. You'll get there eventually, or you'll never get there. It's fine. Give yourself a break. But as you forgive, your shoulders, my son forgave a bunch of people, and he said, Mom, my shoulders felt lighter. And he said, that's weird, and it shouldn't be this way. He's a federal law enforcement officer, so, he's like, this is really weird. But, and I feel energy coming out of my solar plexus. Again, that feels weird. But it does happen. And because you're putting the anger down, even with the easy ones, you're gonna be able to start to pay attention to the world around you. You might see a brand new way of making money or a new job. Why didn't you see it before? Because you were too focused on the anger. Your world's going to start to clear. You might find a wonderful way to lose weight. There's a reason to buy the book. You might lose some weight. You might make some money. There you go. Weight loss, money. Good. So why is this happening? All right. One of the things that people throw at you is one of those sayings is anger is toxic. Nobody tells you how. I'll
Right.
tell you how. There was a Japanese water study. It's a real study. You can Google this. The pictures are fascinating. The gentleman's name was Masumoto. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing this correctly. And I'm going to simplify this, but dumb it down as far as I can. Several containers of water. One container of water he spoke loving, beautiful words to. And that's all he did. He just talked to it. The other container of water, he threw hate, nasty, told him he'd hated it. It was horrible, every bad thing he could say. Then he put it under a microscope. The water he said bad things to had these black and brown formations, really nasty things. And the water he spoke love to had these beautiful formations. They were gorgeous. Why am I telling you this? The human body is almost 98% water. So if your self-talk is bad and you're angry all the time and you're living in bitterness, what do you think you're doing to the water cells in your own body? So as you forgive the ones, the twos, the threes, the fives, you're literally changing your body chemistry. You're changing those black and brown, sludgy, disruptive cells back into beautiful ones. And it's going to change your life.
Oh, wow. Amazing. I really like that because I've always heard that the body keeps memory. And that's one way that you can think about how the body keeps memory through those water cells and, the percentage of really what our body is in water. And if we're constantly going through negativity and negativity in our own minds, negativity around us, then we can imagine that our body is going to consistently carry that. And in order to lift that out, we could get to a place where there's more positivity and you're no longer holding on to those negative pieces of your life, and your body begins to change. Wow. So as we're talking about this, so initially it was like, okay, I can do this. I'm going through this process. It's a mental thing. I'm gonna start going through this. But now you're saying it also affects our body. What are other, I guess, effects and benefits of forgiveness that you have come across as you've been doing your writings and your studies?
Well, there's two actually. When I first did this, there's two stories. The first time my partners and I came up with this method around 2020, 2021, something like that. And so we all three of us went and did our own method, right? And so because I'm an overachiever, I really did write a bunch of books, and I go through stuff, and I'm crazy. I love to write. That's how I got through college. If the test didn't have an essay question on it, I was sunk. I could always pull it off through writing. But I love to write. It's my happy place. So I go through all these crazy things. I've been through breast cancer. I've been through money problems. I've been through all these things. I write about it. Inevitably, it ends up in a book. So I wrote down all the people, places, and things that I thought I should forgive. There must have been 50 names on that piece of paper. And I thought, this is going to be great. I'm going to be like a phoenix rising from the ashes, or a butterfly coming out of a cocoon. Tomorrow morning, I did it right before bed. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be just a brand new person. I'm going to feel great. Yeah, no, didn't work out that way. Remember that water study and how you have the cells have to turn into something brilliant? Okay, well, they have to go someplace when you clear them. Now, the human body is a very magical thing, like the human brain, and it heals itself to a certain degree when you're asleep, which is why I want you to do this work asleep. But if you forgive too many people at once, it's going to have to play catch up. So I spent the next 3 days in bed with what everybody thought was a stomach flu. It was not the stomach flu. It was my body trying to clear out all that dark brown, horrible, irritated cells. So my advice to everybody is to please limit yourself to like 10 to 12 a night so you don't get sick like I did. I forgave a very interesting story that'll stretch people's brains a little bit. I apologize on a Saturday morning. I forgave a level 1 person, went to school with this person. I couldn't even remember what I was mad at. I couldn't. So it was super easy. Got it right on the first try. And my process is you don't have to reach out and call these people. I just sat in the middle of my bed. I imagined her as I knew her 30, never mind how many years ago. Well, it was 1970s. I'm 63. There you have it. But, I remembered her how she was in the 70s. Not how she was today. I didn't know. I hadn't heard from her in 30 plus years. But I remembered how she looked, and I forgave that person. Then I imagined she walked out of the room, and I felt better. 2 hours later, she calls me up on the phone. Hadn't heard from her in 30 years. And I'm a concierge by trade. That's what I used to do. I used to train concierge. So my concierge, I was shocked out of my mind, but my concierge training kicked in. So we said all the right things, all the right words. We made all the right noises, all these kinds of things. We made up, we reminisced. But then I had to know. I said, I'm a curious little bear. I have to know. Why did you call me after all these years? Why did you call me today? She said, it was the darndest thing. 2 hours ago, which was exactly when I was saying the mantra I have in my book, a figurine you gave me in school flew off my shelf, landed in the middle of my floor, and I looked at it and decided I should forgive you. So if the power of forgiveness has the power to move a figurine off a shelf 700 miles away, and the power of forgiveness has the power to clear all those cells in your body, imagine what your life's going to be like.
Wow. I think it's one of those things, it's not about convincing, it's just doing.
No.
If we take the steps and do, then you will receive the benefits of it. I always share this because none of us, we might know, are electricians and know how the light switch works behind the scenes. We just know how to flip it on and flip it off. And it's the same thing with forgiveness. Just if you do it and you operate with it, you don't have to understand actually all of the lower levels and have to be convinced.
No.
Just start doing it and allow that light to shine within your life in a different way than what you've ever experienced before. So as you have discussed, you shared some of the benefits of being able to have forgiveness be a part of your life. How has this affected your relationships? And because we are relational beings, and how we end up operating in this world is really more about a reflection of who we are. How has that affected your relationships in this world?
I can look back at my dysfunctional family and see the love that was there. I can see pockets of love. I can see pockets of laughter. I can see pockets of times I really had great times with my parents. I could probably regurgitate the nasty stuff if you wanted me to, but to be honest, to this day, I have a really hard time remembering it. I know it was there, but it's really hard for me to remember. It's almost as if I've changed my past. And I know a lot of you are living your story. I run into a bunch of people who said their negativity and hate has gotten me where I am today. That was the fuel to my car. That's why I became a success. Sure you did. I agree with you. It probably did. You've got good money, you've got a house, but you took the local train. The local train will get you to the destination, but you're going to stop at every Tom, Dick, and Harry flu bug and nasty and all these nasty things, because if you're living your life fueled on hate, that's what you're going to attract into your life. Wouldn't you rather take the express? Love and forgiveness will get you twice as far, twice as fast than the other. I've also noticed in the people around me, my friends have changed. The people who were those energy sucking vampires, no disrespect to everybody, but my friends have changed. So I've attracted people who are loving and are better than me, to be quite honest. And the other people have just disappeared. And my everything has changed around my life. And that's what forgiveness will do. It kind of will, you'll be prepared to lose some people, but also be prepared to gain some people as well. Right?
Yes.
Now, if it's family, not much you can do. Family is family. And my mother used to say, every family's the same, only the names are different. So, what if you're going for Christmas? Well, let's say Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving's coming up, right? And I don't have an Aunt Martha, which is why I use the name. Let's say your family always puts you next to Aunt Martha. She drinks, she's nasty, and she pushes your button like nobody does. And every year you leave feeling sick and tired and really angry. And it takes you a couple days to recover, because you're always put next to Aunt Martha, and you've begged and pleaded and gotten down your knees and said, please don't sit me next to her. And somehow you're next to Aunt Martha every year. So what do? Most families have an Aunt Martha. Come on, everybody has an Aunt Martha. So about a few days before, I want you to use my process, and I want you to forgive Aunt Martha, the energy around Aunt Martha. I want you to pick out a Thanksgiving, maybe in your memory bank, that maybe was the one that causes the most pain. Forgive the Thanksgiving table, forgive the food at the table. I'm actually not kidding. Forgive the energy around these things. Forgive the table, forgive the chair, forgive the other people who are in conversations, and the energy around all these things. And try and forgive Aunt Martha. And even if you can't forgive Aunt Martha herself, forgive the energy around her. So what's that going to do? Okay, it's not going to change Aunt Martha, sadly. As much as I would love to give you a magic pill, she's still going to be Aunt Martha. However, it will change you, because it's not going to bother you as much. When she tries to push the buttons, it's not going to work. You'll probably laugh to yourself. It's not going to do work. You won't care. Plus, you'll be expecting it, because you know what you're going to get when you sit next to her. So This is a way to remove the emotional charge to these things.
And that's interesting, because I always remember, I think it's Charles Swindoll that said something about, the 90% of life that how 10% of life that happens to you, and then the 90% is how you react to it.
That's
and
right.
We get to really begin to be in charge of those things that really change us or emotionally cause us to go into different places when we go into a place of forgiveness. And as you have stated, you change your patterns of thought, triggers that you have in your life, to where they're no longer triggers. They are now no longer patterns that you continue to just fall into, but you intentionally, and we kind of talked about this at the beginning before we started this conversation, is how does intention play a role in this? Because I think that sometimes
I can answer that.
we find that we kind of feel like we're victims, especially as we're going into the holidays, and there are a lot of things that are going on, or we're going into situations. How does intention play a role in this?
Let me use breast cancer as an example. I'm a stage 3 triple positive breast cancer survivor. It happens to be October, so it's a good topic. How did I get through it? Stage 3, should have died. Well, when you have dinner with the Grim Reaper and you don't go home with the guy, it kind of changes you. So I have a different perspective than everybody else. But back in those, I'm 12 years out. And back in those days, they sent you to chemo class. I don't know. I don't think they do it today, but they did back then. And they sit you in this room and they tell you all the nasty things that's about to happen to you. And you're already scared because the big C word, cancer, means you're going to die, right? Okay, I didn't die. So, but they tell you all these nasty things. Nothing good, nothing about what you should be eating, nothing, just all the bad stuff. Nurse Ratchet is at the front of the room, and I walked up to her because my brain snapped, and I said, I'm not going to get all those. And I live in the South. So she said, oh, honey, you're going to get most of them. I said, no, I'm not. Fast forward a year, she grabs me in the hall. I was doing one of my last chemo infusions, and she said, what are you doing? What? What do you mean, what am I doing? Walking down the hall. And she said, what are you doing? You didn't get as sick as everybody else, and we threw some really bad stuff at you. What are you eating? I said, well, I'm eating clean and organic and doing all the things I'm supposed to do. But you remember a year ago when I told you I wasn't going to get as sick? She said, yeah. I said, that's what I did. She said, I don't believe you had to do something. I said, yeah, it was my attitude. The brain is very powerful, and you really can't control what life throws at you, but you can control how you get through it. And positivity and gratitude is something I suggest everybody practice. It's like a shower. I suggest you do it every day. And sometimes when you go through things like cancer, it's a minute by minute by minute choice to keep your brain the same way. And when we came up with this method, I forgave cancer and the energy around cancer. I forgave the radiation table and the radiation itself. I forgave chemo. I forgave the chemo infusions. And I picked out absolutely every piece, and I forgave it all and the energy around it all. And as I was going through it, I knew forgiveness. This is 12 years ago, so I knew that forgiveness was powerful. I didn't know the how yet, but I kind of, through forgiveness, positivity, and gratitude, that's how I got through to the other side, and I'm still here. Didn't die. I've been pronounced cured, actually, by the oncologist.
It's amazing, and that is, I think, the key to a lot of, people are going through different things. Life is going to happen. However, we have the ability to really have intention, and thank God that you're here and that you are able to share and to pass this on to everyone that is here. We have come to the time. Time just always goes by quickly. I always ask this question for our audience's sake, based on your book and what you have written. You've taken the time to say, hey, you have the ultimate path to forgiveness. What are some items that our audience should take, whether one or two items that they should take and apply to their lives right now, today, that will be helpful for them, that you would pass along to our audience?
The first thing I want to tell you is you're worthy. You're worthy to live a life of joy and happiness. It's your birthright. And I also want everybody to understand that if that unforgivable person, you don't have to forgive the unforgivable person. Concentrate on the dozens of other people, places, and things first. And eventually you can get to that unforgivable person, because that's why you're stuck. That's why you're where you are, because you're focused on that one unforgivable memory or a bunch of unforgivable memories. Maybe it's your whole childhood that's unforgivable. That's fine. Pick out other things that are not and focus on that for a while. And that's going to be just enough to get you away from that wall, into that great job, into the good health, all these things. This is a journey. This a lot of people call it shadow work, but this is a journey, and you can do it. And if you really, really can't, here's what I want you to say. I forgive myself for not being able to forgive. And the energy around this thought. Start there. Say that every night for a week. And then write the list and do the other stuff I have in the book. But just start there.
Well, thank you for all the great insights. I have learned quite a bit about forgiveness, and it's definitely a different take. And I appreciate the take that you have provided and actual practical steps. Where can my audience find you and also purchase your book and books that you have?
Well, all my books are on Amazon, and I do acknowledge that not everybody likes to read, so I do have the audiobook, the paperback, and the ebook available on Amazon. You can book a session with me or read about me on my website, which is katharinegiovanni.com. And thanks to my mother, my first name is spelled a little odd. Thanks, Mom. Katharine Giovanni.com.
That makes you unique. And so, of
That's
course,
right.
I encourage
Thanks, Mom.
everyone. I encourage everyone to please go out, check out katharinegiovanni.com and all of the books that are related there. Thank you so much for sharing this information.
My pleasure.
As we continue to look at producing on purpose in our lives with intention, forgiveness becomes a very paramount that we do that on a consistent basis. I really enjoyed the relationship of the water in our bodies. And I always remember that our body does have memory. Now we can relate that to the water study that was done and understand that maybe that we can change the actual composition of our body by forgiving and moving into love and moving into the positive joy of our lives. And that's one of the reasons I'm here doing this podcast, wrote the book, Produce on Purpose, because I believe that we all have the ability to intentionally change our lives, intentionally transform our lives, intentionally have that freedom. And so I encourage everyone, continue to forgive so you can produce on purpose.